Malo lava talo for lava everyone. Sumais talamaya ao. Welcome to our third online Q&A for the Building Business Capability for Individual Practitioners Fund, which is a slight mouthful. And this is for the second round of this fund for this year, 2022. Koaio, or Paul Lisi. My name is Paul Lisi, and I am the Arts Practice Director Pacific here at Creative New Zealand. I have shoulder length, really curly hair. I'm wearing glasses. I have a white C in my hair, and I'm also wearing a dark grey top. I'm beaming in from Albany up here in Tamaki Makaurau. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy days to be here with us. Before we begin our session, I'd like to start with pure. So pure mai tātou. Te atua kia vai mai to awaroa taki ngā mei taki ki runga i a mātou nei I te uri manako anga no tā mātou anga nei, aro a mai koe I a mātou nei, āmene. So today, my co-pilot for the session is the amazingly talented and beautiful Evotia-Rose Araiti. And we are also joined by some of our amazing colleagues from Creative New Zealand, Toi Aotearoa, who, with our powers combined, I'm sure we're able to answer all, if not most, of your questions in the session. Just a quick rundown of how it'll work today. If you have any questions, you can use our Q&A function on the Zoom, or you can raise your hand and we can throw it to you, or you can just ask it in person and put it in the chat function there. So yeah, really good to see everyone here. What we'll go through today will just be mostly looking at, again, the fund and the fund's purpose, also talking through eligibility, the kind of activities that we fund and we don't fund, what to include in your application as well as looking at the assessment criteria, a bit of a checklist, as well as really important dates and contacts. And as we go through the session, you'll be able to ask any questions as well. And I'm sure I'll be able to ask some questions too of Evotia-Rose. This session will also be recorded, so you can revisit this anytime or share it with people within your community who are not here to see it live. And like I said, please feel free to jump in the chat, in the Q&A. We'd love to hear from you. And if there are any questions that we don't answer, we'll be able to add them to our FAQs that we'll have up on our website. So without further ado, let me throw Zarako over to Evotia-Rose. Over to you in the studio.
Catching you in the studio there, Paul Lisi, talo whalava. Kia ora tātou katoa toa I te apo. Warm Pacific greetings to you all, wherever you are beaming in from. Firstly, a big mea taki mata for making the time to be with us. I appreciate it's Friday Eve, as I call it, but you may be making dinner, you may be with your families, you may have finished a big day of work. So mea taki mata very much for being here with us tonight. Such a privilege and a pleasure. We unfortunately can't see you, but we feel your presence. But if you do, as Paul said, you know, if you've got any questions, if you want to engage with us, we want this to be a kōrero, a talanoa, tuatua between us all. So please feel free to message us in the chat, to use the Q&A function to help engage with us. And we also have the option to unmute you if you would like to say something. So we've got all of the options. Let's use them. So tonight we are here talking about the business building capability for individual practitioners. As Paul said, it's a bit of a mouthful, but a really important fund, and one that we are really excited and feeling, what's the word, right about delivering again. This is the second time that we're offering this, and the fact that the first one was a pilot, I think really shows that this hit a need for our people out there. So really excited to deliver that again. I haven't introduced myself. Ko Evotia-Rose Araiti tōku ingoa, no rarotonga e atu mai au, no China, India, Ireland mai au also, I te taha o taku mama. And I have the privilege of being part of the Capability Services and Initiatives team, and I'm a senior advisor there with the Pacific also in my title. So, have the privilege of serving our Pasifika communities. So if it's all right with you, Paul, could you please take the show away and we'll just jump straight into our slides. So to explain a little bit about how I'm going to do this tonight, our presentation, I'm going to talk through the information, give you all the nitty gritty about this fund and the details around it, but we'll also pause throughout just to check in and see if you have any questions, as Paul said. Paul is going to be quizmaster, so he also might come at me with a couple of questions, but please feel free as we go. Again, this is a conversation, it's Alanoa, so please feel free to put your questions in the chat and we can answer them as we go. But really what we find often really valuable about these sessions is the opportunity for you all to ask the questions that you want to help you feel ready and prepared to make an application for this, should that be something you want to do. But I also want to assure you before we launch into this, that these slides will be made available on our website. All of this information will be on our website, and also there will be opportunities to make an appointment with somebody like myself as a senior advisor, but also my wonderful colleagues in the background and some who aren't able to make it tonight, if you would like to talk to somebody in person. So if you're feeling a bit akama, a bit shy tonight, or you just need to let it digest and filter, kare e mana manata, no problems. There'll be opportunities for you to ask questions and at different points along the journey. Thank you, Paul. We'll jump into what the intention is here. So we've got this wonderful, intention and purpose of the fund there. What I'd really like to highlight is that this is for individual artists and arts practitioners. So this means that this is not for our arts organizations, even if you are a part of one. This is for you as an individual and as an artist and arts practitioner. The second thing that I want to focus on here is that this is about developing your business capabilities and skills. I'm showing my DJing skills there, but you can't apply for that in this. This is about developing those business capabilities and skills. So again, that's the focus. It's not about developing your arts practice, and we'll talk a little bit about that further on through the presentation. The next key part to this or element is it's about developing those business practices and skills that are going to help support you having a long-lasting and prosperous career. And this can be also including how you adjust your activities or how you adjust your business to be future ready as well. So we acknowledge that change is almost an overused word now, but definitely a reality. So if your audiences and communities and environment is changing, how can you have the right business capabilities and skills to help keep up with that to support your career? And the final thing here to point out is to future-proof your business practice. And again, just that focus on business capability and not the arts practice. So just to recap, this is for individual artists and arts practitioners, developing business capabilities and skills to support a long-lasting, prosperous career and future-proofing that in a business sense. Next slide, please, pilot. Awesome. So now we're talking about eligibility. Who can apply? So the first step here is to choose one funding pool that you would like to, attach yourself to. So we've got three options: general arts, Ngātoi Māori, or Pasifika arts. And so for our Ngātoi Māori and Pasifika arts, there are a couple of things to be mindful of here. If you've got kaupapa within your project that aligns to Ngātoi Māori or Pasifika arts, then those might be the pools that you want to consider, and consider perhaps which, I appreciate many of us are like me, a fruit salad. So which kaupapa potentially does your project align more closely to? Also, if you whakapapa to Ngātoi Māori or Pasifika's descent, then also those are pools that you can look into. The second thing is the project timing. So we're looking for proposals that will begin from the 25th of November this year, 2022, and finish in a year's time. So within by the 25th of November. As you can see there, what we're looking for is projects that directly benefit New Zealand arts or arts practitioners. So again, looking at these business capabilities and how they're going to directly support you as an individual artist or arts practitioner in a business capability sense. We acknowledge in that you may be a sole trader, for example, or again, you might be an artist that's part of an arts organization, but the focus for this is about you as an individual and an individual arts practitioner, and we're asking for you to apply as such as that individual. You must have a track record of experience and success. So this fund wonderfully is open to emerging, mid-career or established artists, but we would like to see a track record of success in your arts practice. So that could look like examples of times that you've exhibited your work, perhaps times that your works have been performed, and we can talk a little bit more about what those different evidence or examples could look like to show that. And if you are a previous recipient of this fund and you were successful, congratulations, wonderful, well done. Unfortunately, you won't be able to apply for this particular round, but we congratulate you nonetheless. And if you did apply and you were unsuccessful last round, but you're wanting to apply this round, what we'd recommend is that you get in touch with us and we'll have a chat. So I'm just going to pause there because we've talked a little bit about the funding purpose and also a little bit about the eligibility criteria. So I just wanted to check in and see if anyone has any questions around whether they're eligible or perhaps the fund that the project that they're thinking about, whether that sits within the fund purpose. So just pause for a moment and see if we have any questions come through.
Yeah, and I guess while we're waiting for questions to come through, I think one really great thing to consider, particularly around funding pools, is that for Ngātahi Māori and for Pacific Arts in particular, we try really hard to ensure that the application is assessed by a Ngātahi Māori expert as well as a Pacific Arts expert. So those are just things for you to consider as artists. Technically, you can apply for any one of the three if you fit the criteria for that. But just keeping in mind that that's another thing to consider, is that someone who understands what it means to be a Pacific artist also will be looking and assessing your application. And our wonderful team in the background has put in links in the chat. So if you have any further kind of burning questions, there are links there to some more information up on our website. I also just wanted to touch a bit on track record. We've in previous sessions, we've had people asking, what is a track record? And Evotia-Rose has beautifully explained what that is and what that encompasses. Again, more information can be found on our website in terms of what we mean by track record specifically. At this stage, just looking through at our Q&A, I don't see that anyone's asked any questions. That must mean that we're doing such a good job, Evotia-Rose. So yeah, if you want, I can chuck it back up and we can continue.
Right. We're still massaging the space, getting those knots all worked out. And if you have any questions or that knot, undoes itself as we go on, please just put your questions in the chat, in the Q&A, and we can come to them as we go. Me taki Paul. Right. So now we're going to look at a little bit into what the fund actually covers. So there is a minimum of what you need to apply for in terms of funding amount. So a minimum of $5,000 and a maximum of $10,000 for your funding application here. And the great thing is that can include one or a combination of the following areas or activities. Research and planning. And so an example of that, for example, might be a business plan, audience development plan, or looking at how you can diversify your income, for example. Next one, thanks, Paul. Inclusion. So as you can see there's a couple of examples. We're having a lot of conversations about diversity, unconscious bias. I know that there are a lot of organizations that are looking at titiriti and understanding how they can better partner in that space. So there might be personal development that you would like to do in that space, and that is something that could be looked at or applied for under here. manawaroa and resilience. Really acknowledge that the past 2 years has been incredibly tough, and has been incredibly tough in particular for our artists and arts organisations. It has not been an easy time for us, for our sector. That's an understatement probably. So yeah, this is a beautiful opportunity to look at some stress management training potentially, or wellbeing and hauora health coaching that you could potentially undertake to support you. Professional development. So you can see some wonderful examples there. And this can also include some fees for education and educational courses, if that's something that you would like to do to support you in developing your business capability. Digital skills, hugely relevant. You know, when the pandemic came about, everybody went online. And so if you're wanting to develop your website further, or develop online content or a digital strategy, for example, I know that there are many individuals and arts organisations that have looked into this over the past couple of years, in particular last year. So that's something that you could apply for within this fund. And digital tools. I think this is really something really special about this fund, is that there's also funding available here to support you with some of those CapEx, capital expenditure items, or tools to actually support you in enabling you to do all of this, I suppose, business that you are looking to develop. So there's some examples there that might be software. It could be hardware in the form of a laptop, for example. The thing to be really mindful of here is, one, that there's a cap of $3,000 that can go towards capital expenditure, but also that you would need to demonstrate how those tools actually support you in building the business capability that you want to. So it can't just be in isolation. It needs to be strongly connected to the capability that you're wanting to develop. Cool. So we've talked through what can be covered, and so what isn't in scope within this fund. As we've mentioned earlier on, the artistic practice. So your artistic practice does not come within the scope of this fund. And we've, in the last round, we definitely found that there were people who had questions about, when there's sometimes a little bit of a fine line, or they're a bit unclear of whether or not their proposal sits within that arts practice space. So what I would massively recommend is that if you have any questions or you're unclear about that, please feel free to ask us here, or please feel free to email us, and a link will go out later on about the email address. There we go, wonderful. This is why I feel like Beyonce. I've got a whole backup team just, sending out all the messages. Thank you so much, team. That if you want to check, if you want to check and ensure that what you're wanting to apply for actually fits within scope, please feel free to get in touch with us. The next is in connection to this project cost for your artistic practice. Also, again, not within scope. As we mentioned earlier on, you have to have a minimum ask of $5,000. And I feel like that's a really positive thing. The minimum you must ask for is $5,000. If that was my spending budget, I'd be very happy. So it's there. Please feel free to, look at, I suppose, the possibilities that are out there in terms of what can meet that for you. And again, remember, it's not just necessarily one project or one capability. It can be multiple activities, for example. And the next is organisations. We mentioned this earlier on, that this fund is in particular for individual artists and arts practitioners. And again, as there's sort of a note there, we acknowledge that you may be a sole trader, or that you may be part of an arts organisation, and that the development that you receive or you benefit from through, if you are successful in this fund, may flow through to the organisation that you're a part of, or the business that you have, and that's fine. But what we're asking for everybody to do is to apply as an individual, please. Costs incurred before the 25th of November, unfortunately, also won't be within scope. So we can't retrospectively, pay for any costs that have been incurred prior to this date. So if you're wanting for us to pay for your student loan, kare, sorry about that. Yeah, it's not going to be within scope of this one. And then finally, the last one is that, as we sort of touched on before, capital expenditure costs, they can't just be by itself. There must be, the tools must support the project that you are looking to implement. So you would just need to articulate how the two are connected, and you can apply for up to $3,000 worth of capital expenditure there. So again, we're just going to pause and check in, and if people would like to, again, if you're akama or you don't have any questions, you're in that digesting, processing phase, kare e mana manata, no problem. But we just wanted to check in. Does anyone already have some projects in mind potentially, or that you're thinking of, and that maybe you wanted to float here and check whether those projects or those costs might be eligible? Just going to pause here and just see if anyone sends anything through. And Paul, if you have, Quizmaster, if you have anything for me as well, please feel free.
Oh, thank you very much for the opportunity to ask a question. I do have a question actually, particularly around CapEx costs, or applying just for CapEx, because I know that one of the things that one of the questions that we quite often get is, can we buy, can we spend the money on buying physical things that we can use to upskill, or a lot of that stuff? And for this fund in particular, we have allowed that. But again, please get in touch with us if you have any kind of specific questions. Evotia, do you have any examples of what might be a good kind of CapEx cost that people might want to consider as part of this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, for example, Zoom subscriptions, I think it's really relevant for the time that we're operating in at the moment, and particularly as people have shifted online. Another example is, so that's sort of probably more software. Financial software could be another example of a cost. So perhaps using a system like Xero. Connected to that is subscription. So particularly, I know that we had some membership subscriptions at different, I think in some proposals that we received last time. And I'm just thinking through, again, as I mentioned, it might be a laptop. I know that can be perhaps a barrier sometimes if people are wanting to move online and they can't. Just trying to think of other ones that came through. IT software or hardware, fundraising or commerce tools, and live streaming or VR tools are some other examples as well.
Yeah, and linked to this, we have our first question from the audience. Thank you, Amiri Puyatela, for your question. So she asks, oh, she's going to ask it live. Go for it, Media. Oh no, actually, I was wrong. Sorry, back on me. She asks, does this fund support the costs of an accountant and the services they have, or perhaps financial development training?
So I'm going to let as I said, I've got a whole team in the background that will help answer this as well, but I would definitely say that the financial development training would definitely be within scope of this fund. The support costs of an accountant and the services they may offer, I think it would depend on what kind of services you'd be looking for there. Media, what I can do as well is maybe you and I can have a chat offline, or I can also talk to my colleagues offline and just get some more detail around, because I think that would be within scope to an extent. It would just be getting some specifics around what support you were wanting from that accountant, and if that's in line with the fund. But I'll get in touch with you and we can have a chat.
And we've also got
Me taki ma'ata for your question.
Yeah, and we've also got our team in the background providing some more clarity around that as well. So Media, if we don't answer your question today, like Evotia said, we will get in touch with you. We also have one more question coming through. Wow, the questions are flying through. We have a question that asks, can I choose the specialist I want to work with? And does this include mentoring?
Oh, yes, yes, and yes. We would, and that's so we encourage you to find a specialist or a consultant or whatever services you're wanting to engage. The expectation is that you would find them for yourself, but we acknowledge that some people may have a bit of trouble finding that. So if that's the case, you can come to us and we might be able to provide you with some knowledge or some providers that we may have heard of. We don't have a list or I suppose any recommendations from any providers. So that's, I suppose, something to keep in mind. And mentoring would definitely sit within scope of this fund. But again, the mentoring, just to be very clear, it would need to be around business capability. So if that was, for example, a financial coach or well-being coach, perhaps a production skills. I think we talked about that last time. To my team in the background, please correct me if I'm wrong. Their coaching and mentoring would definitely be within scope, but it would need to be business capability focused, not for your arts practice, just to be really clear. Me taki maata for your question.
I think we're, yeah, no more questions on this end. Okay.
All right. Well, me taki everyone for your questions. Loving that we're this little action was like, yay, we've massaged the knot and the blood is flowing. This is great. So we'll just go back to our presentation. Thank you, Paul. So now we're looking at the actual application. So what should you include? So there's 4 key questions here. What, how, who, and how much. So Paul, if you could just pull up all of that information. I'm very mindful that, yeah, there's a lot of information on here. You don't need to note any of this down. The slides will be available, but sort of, I suppose, to hone in on each area, what are we asking for? So what is your project, your business capability project or idea? And connected to that, how is it going to support you to have a career long term? So I think there's 2 parts to that. What's the idea, or perhaps three parts, sorry. What is the idea? What is the business capability you're wanting to develop? And how is this going to help benefit your career long term? So just thinking through those 3 pieces. How is really about the plan. How will you deliver this? What is your plan for delivering this? When will it happen? Where will it happen? And again, what are those skills that you're looking to develop? And then naturally flowing on from that is who. Who is involved, and who are you going to engage to deliver that project? So as we just wonderfully talked about earlier, that might be the service provider or consultant or coach or mentor that you feel is the right person to support you in this capability building journey. And then how much? So we're looking for a thorough budget to break down the costs of your application, and as part of that, I apologize, I don't think I mentioned this earlier on, but as part of that budget, you can pay yourself. So please, we are fiercely advocating for artists to always know their value and to ensure that they are paid their worth. So in this application, you can, in your budget, you can also look to pay yourself to do this development as well. And I would really encourage you to do that. When creating your budget, we have some templates online, and we also have some videos online to support you in creating that. So if this is your first time, or you're a bit unsure, please feel free to go to our website and use those resources to help you. And again, I know I keep saying it, but if you're unsure as you're putting that budget together and you would like a senior advisor to have a wee look over that, please feel free to get in touch with us and we can provide you some advice and support there too. So there's the what to include in the application, and then there are some supporting documents. So as we talked about a bit earlier on, there's an element of eligibility, which is that track record of success. So what does that look like? So an evidence of track record of success, as I mentioned earlier on, could perhaps be evidence of public exhibitions you've had, perhaps records of a performance that you've had. One of the questions that came up in another session that we had that was really on point was, if you're an emerging artist, how do you perhaps meet that? And so what I'd recommend there is getting in touch with us again, and we can have a chat through where you're at in your career, perhaps the artistic work that you've undertaken to date, and perhaps what you have available to show that, so that we can provide you support. And as Paul mentioned earlier on, and as I think we've already put the link in our chat there are also some guidelines to support you with that. CVs and bios, and again, this is for the people that will be involved in helping you deliver your project. Again, we're not making an assessment on whether or not they're the right people, but we want to make sure that they've got an appropriate background to be able to help you get to where you are. But in terms of choosing the right person for you or the right provider for you, that's entirely up to you. Quotes and fees are really important. Again, that really strengthens your budget. It really strengthens your application. So I would really encourage you to do that. And sorry, just kind of going back to our CVs and bios and connected to this, is that confirmation of the availability, of the people that you're wanting to engage on this project. So again, if we've got that confirmation and you've got some quotes and the fees there, it just helps provide a really solid evidence to support your application and your budget about the people that you're wanting to engage and how much they're charging. A timeline to support your application. Again, just a reminder that your projects would need to start from the 25th of November of this year and be finished before the 25th of November 2023. So just providing a timeline to see how it's really the plan of how this is going to be delivered, so that we can see what's going to be delivered where. And also, I suppose, if you are successful in this fund and things change throughout the course of your project, we've got some structure to help support you in your queries about how things might change later on and what you can do in that space. Budget, we've talked a lot about this already, and just that reminder again, you can remunerate for your own time, so please ensure that you add that in there. I don't need to say this, I know we all know it, we've been living in unprecedented and uncertain times, and as part of that, what we are looking for and asking for, please, is a COVID contingency plan, so that we can just see how your project or proposal would be activated if there were any changes. One of the things that I would just say here is that this is obviously creating that plan with what's known at the moment. We don't expect you to be future fortune tellers and know what's going to happen in the future. So if you can just create that within what's known in terms of the government guidelines now, that would be fantastic. And then the last piece here is an optional. It's not required, but I would really encourage people that this resonates with to give it a go. We are requiring written content for your application, but you also have the option of creating or supplying a video or an audio file, which needs to be 5 minutes maximum in length. But if to explain or I suppose share more about your proposal, should you like. Now, I suppose just to be really mindful, again, as we've shared before, this fund is not intended to support your arts practice. So this isn't about showing your I suppose, it's not your artistic CV, and it's not an opportunity, I suppose, to show your artistic practice. It's really, I suppose, another opportunity for you to provide more explanation or further support for your application. But this might be really helpful, for example, if you're not comfortable writing purely, you might want to find it easier to express yourself talking, or perhaps, with a PowerPoint or something, I'm not sure, but that option is there. And we've had a question in a previous session about, if you're neurodiverse, the different support that's available to you. And this is one of those options that you can use. I think our wonderful team has put in the chat that there are some guidelines around the different file formats that we accept as part of the application. So again, there's wonderful guidelines available on our website to support you in that. And I think that's that. I'll move into the next slide if that's okay, Paul, and then we'll pause again just to answer questions. So this is the assessment criteria that will be used to assess all of the proposals that come through. And one tip that was shared in a previous session, which I thought was really helpful, is it can actually be helpful to think about what the assessors are looking at or looking for, and think about that, and I suppose perhaps get yourself in the mind of an assessor when you're actually completing your application. So as you can see, there are some key points there about what the assessor will be looking for. First one there being, why is this support needed now? And so why are you wanting to build this capability now? Perhaps why is it, how has it come up, or how have you seen it, found that you need this? And again, how is it going to support you long-term in your artistic career? Again, we want the assessor will be looking to ensure that the impact that you're hoping to achieve in your capability development can be achieved through your application. So is there a realistic timeline or plan? Are those realistic costs? Yeah, so things like that. Is the project going to be able to achieve what it wants to achieve in the time frame that's available? Sort of very much connected to that planning. Is your plan and timeline realistic? Obviously, if you're wanting to do a 3-year degree, that's probably not going to fit within the timeline of 1 year. Really admire if you can, and gosh, I wish I'd known you earlier on when I was at uni so that I could have done that. But so thinking about, yeah, they'll be looking for this for your plan and the timeline. Is it realistic? And so again, just putting in the thought to that when you're planning it out, and thinking through all of the different steps of your project or proposal, so that the assessor can see that really clearly will really help your application. Budget, is it thorough, is it accurate? And again, those quotes and those fees will really support providing, I suppose, support the budget and providing evidence for those numbers and figures that you are putting forth there. And again, looking at the people. So are the people that you're wanting to involve in your project, are the mentors, are the providers, got the right skills and experience to help you deliver the project or help you build the capability that you want to. And again, you have complete sovereignty to choose the providers there. It's just the sense check to make sure that we can see that skills and experience being able to support you. So I'm now going to pause again. I think I see a little question in our Q&A, which makes me very excited, but just to check in and see if anybody has any questions around the application. So just to recap, we went through what goes into the application, the supporting documents to include in your application, and then also how that application is going to be assessed. So I'll just pause, and we might go to the Q&A function first.
Yeah, we've had some great questions come through, and I guess it'll be really useful for us to kind of talk through them as well, just so that we've got that as part of the recording as well. So someone's asked, can I choose a specialist I want to work with? And, oh, sorry, that's already answered, sorry. There we go. Just wondering how long they have to do their project. So for example, can they start in January? And yes, our lovely team in the background has answered that question. Yes, your project can start anytime after the 25th of November 2022 and must be completed by the 25th of November 2023. So you have 12 months to complete it, but starting from this November, which Evotia touched on earlier as well.
And that's, I suppose, it's a really good point, Paul, and thank you, team in the background, for supporting us with that it doesn't have to go for the whole 12 months. Mm-hmm. It can be shorter periods within that. And just to be really clear, I suppose, with your timeline, if, for example, you were looking to get or applying for a subscription, for example, and your timeline was only for 4 months, you will only receive, if you were successful, then the subscription the funding would only support the subscription for the 4 months of your project. So if you're wanting that, I suppose a subscription, for example, over the period of 12 months, then we'd be wanting to see that timeline expanded to 12 months and how that subscription is being supported or used throughout that. But again, you're not tied to it having to be a 12-month project. It can be smaller and start within that time period.
Right. We've also got another really awesome question about saying that this person is a member of an artist collective and not sure if they can apply for training for all of them, or do they have to just apply for themselves?
Oh, me toki ma'ata for that question, and I just want to acknowledge that particularly in our Pasifika communities, and I appreciate, again, there's lots of diversity in our Pasifika community, so not trying to lump us all together, but I know that value of how do we bring us all together and how do we uplift everybody is really important to us. Unfortunately for this, or fortunately for this particular fund, what we're asking each person to do is apply as an individual artist or arts practitioner, but that also means that the others in your collective, if they also fit the eligibility criteria, could apply as individuals as well for themselves. So that's what I would recommend that you do there. And again, you know, all of this session will be recorded, so you can also take the link once it's available, and we've also got other links up there and all of the information that's available. I would encourage you actually to share that with your collective and encourage them to apply if they're eligible, and if that's something that will support them in the capabilities that they are wanting to develop as an individual.
We've got one more as well. Can CNZ provide a list of business advisors, organisations, online business advisors, marketing here in New Zealand that we as artists can connect or access, that CNZ have also have a relationship with? You know, is there a section of people that we could get in touch with, for example?
That's a really great question. And so I suppose what the answer is there is we don't have a list existing, and we've talked about it internally around whether or not we create a list. But I suppose what we have to be mindful of is we haven't necessarily worked with lots of, I suppose, a huge range of different consultants or providers. I suppose when I say a huge range, in proportion to perhaps the number of applications that we have and the diversity of applications, depending on what you're wanting to work on, we don't have a list that a list at all, but also trying to create one that would meet all of those different needs, I don't think would be helpful or I suppose valuable, because we know that as we've gone on, with these different providers that different artists have worked with that they've found very valuable that perhaps we haven't known of. So what I would encourage you there to do is to get in touch with us if you are struggling. Get in touch with us, but also, sorry, as I'm thinking through this, talk to other artists, you know, or perhaps people that you see as a, you know, perhaps if there's, for example, if you're wanting to build financial capability and you know of somebody who is an accountant, or perhaps there's, you know, a local accountant down the road, maybe just pop in and ask them, look, this is what I'm wanting to develop. Can you recommend anybody? I know that particularly in some of the other works or collectives that we've worked with, that often it's the knowledge that the different communities have that is the power in terms of recommending different providers or consultants or people that they've worked with, and they can talk to I suppose the experience and the outcomes that those service providers have been able to give them. So to summarize, no, we don't have a list. If you are struggling, you can get in touch with us and we can perhaps provide you names of you know, different services or providers that we know, but we're also intentionally not creating a list just to keep everybody safe and also keep options open.
Yeah, and we've got one more question before we carry on. I heard there was a cap last time of 100 applications. Is this still a thing?
Thank you to whoever asked that. Uianga, kare, there is no cap on the number of applications that we can take in this time. So aere mai, come and bring your application, please. If you're eligible, you know, or if your community, others in your community are eligible, then please encourage them to apply. We heard the feedback that wasn't something that wasn't well, that I think some people struggled with, and we've looked to change that actively. So me taki mata to whoever asked that Uianga, and it's wonderful to give great news that kare e cap. Awesome. Is that all our questions for the moment?
Yep, for now.
Okay, right. If we can please go back to our slideshow. Wonderful. So we're wrapping up now. We're sort of in the last part. So if you're keen to apply, we've gone through, we talked through the fund's purpose, eligibility. Let me just look at my notes to make sure that I've gone over what is covered in terms of costs and what isn't. We've talked a little bit about the application and what's going to be asked of you. We've also then talked about the supporting documentation that's going to be required. And then we've talked a little bit about the assessment criteria and what the assessors will be looking for. So if you're still going, yep, or you're going, yes, I am ready, then this is the checklist that we encourage you to look at when you're getting ready to apply. So the first thing there is to look at the assessment criteria. And again, we've got that wonderful summary on the previous slide, and these slides will be available on the website for you. The next thing that we would recommend is to have a look at the guidelines and the frequently asked questions, FAQs. Those will be available on our website. And looking at the guidelines will also help you get an understanding of whether your project proposal or the costs that you're wanting to perhaps apply for are in scope or not. But again, if those questions that you have are not answered within the FAQ or the guidelines, you have the option of also contacting us. And I think on the next slide, our our email address is there. The third thing to do is prepare your budget. And I'd recommend that you even if you just start a draft of this, start this early so that you can begin to think through it. Think about how you use that 5,000, remember it's 5,000 minimum, 10,000 maximum. Look at what the 3,000 potentially of capital expenditure could, how that might fit into there. So even if you're just beginning to brainstorm that, I'd really encourage you to start it early, and also to begin to try and get quotes and fees from anyone that you're wanting to engage so that you can see how that fits in and how much money is left over for other areas potentially. Next, gather your support material. Again, we've got that list there that you can use to help support you as you pull that together, but just double check that you've got everything and then ensure that it's within those guidelines as well. And again, I appreciate I just acknowledge the question that we've had around artistic CV and track record of success. So if you have any questions about that, or you're unsure, particularly if you're an emerging artist, again, please feel free to get in touch with us and we can talk through that. And final, we can't even count, oh my goodness. Decide on your funding pool. Again, there are 3 funding pools. You can only choose one, please. And what, again, I suppose the way to think about which one you might choose to go with is to think about the kaupapa of your project and perhaps your own whakapapa or your akapapaanga, your ancestry, and which of those might feel like the best fit for you. And so we're moving into our final slide here, key information. So when does this open? It opens at 9 a.m. on Monday, the 19th of September. And just as a heads up that if you go into the portal now, if you have a Creative New Zealand account and you've already, while we've been talking, you've eagerly jumped on to Chrome and your browser and you're looking at it, it won't show up yet until the fund has opened. So if you don't see it, please don't panic, that it is coming and it will be visible once the fund opens. And then the fund closes at 1 p.m. on Friday, the 14th of October. Again, beautiful news, kāre e cap, there is no cap on this, so we are open all the way through there. And then in terms of notifications, you'll be notified by Friday, the 25th of November. So you'll see that correlation there between the project start date and also the timeline that we've asked for. So where will all this information be? Again, these slides will be up on our website, but the fund information will also be on our website should you want to go there. And for more information, and as I keep saying, please get in touch with us. As you can see, we're human faces, we're people that aren't afraid to talk or, have a kōrero, have a talanoa, have a cup of tea. Please feel free to get in touch with us either by emailing us and as I understand it, you'll be able to, yes, there it is. You can book a time to discuss your project via our website once the fund opens. So you'll be able to book little time slots to meet with different senior advisors, should that be something that you want to do. And I'd really encourage you to do it, please. If you're unsure, if you're a bit confused, it just takes a quick email or a quick talanoa often to clarify things or put your mind at ease. So this is a wonderful opportunity. I totally encourage you to review this information, understand your eligibility, understand if you have a capability or project that might be able to be supported by it. And if so, be courageous, apply, and also get in touch if you need extra support. So that's our wonderful, look at me just even self-assigning our wonderful presentation, self-assigned there. But before we close, I know that we've got 6 minutes, so we've got a little bit of time. If anyone has any uyanga questions, pātai, please let us know.
And just to, I guess, reiterate the fact that while it is opening in a few weeks, please start now. Start thinking about what those opportunities are, but also start getting in touch with people, start grabbing those quotes, or even start having conversations with people within your circles and within your communities who have the capabilities that you are, the business capabilities that you're kind of really after. So like Evotia said, get in touch with those accountants, get in touch with those people who you want to be mentors. One question that we had previously was whether kuia or any of our elders were eligible for this to be mentors. Yes, they are eligible to be mentors, as long as you include all of that stuff that's in the eligibility criteria, as well as checking through the checklist that you've got all that information ready to go. And also recognizing that not a lot of us are really good with budgets. Put my hand up right into the sky with that one. So please ask, get people to look over it. Get someone who has no idea what your project is to say, does this make sense? Can you see what aspects I'm wanting to spend the money on? Because if you have a really strong budget, it'll make it a lot easier to then translate it into the written word or into the videos, for example, as well. And I encourage you to, if that is an extension of your expression as well, to consider the video aspect of it as well, particularly if you find that you are far more articulate, like myself and Evotia, in front of a camera. And also it allows us to see who you are. And kind of there are things that you can't grasp in the written form that just have to be expressed visually. You're welcome. So yeah, please consider that. And any questions at all, there are no stupid questions. Any kind of niggling thoughts, or if you've come tonight and go to sleep, wake up in the middle of the night and think, I should have asked this, please reach out to us. We're totally here to help, and we really want as many artists and arts practitioners to take this opportunity, because it's a really awesome opportunity to look at the longevity of your practice, or the longevity of your career within the arts. Tia, did you have any last words before we close off?
You can read my manako. I was just going to say, you don't need to wait until the fund opens to email us. So if you do have any questions after this, again, please don't be akama, don't be shy. Feel free to email us whenever you're ready, and it doesn't have to wait until the fund is open. You can do that whenever. And I just wanted to apologize for any of our kopu tangata, our family out there, I didn't describe what I look like. So I have to resist the temptation to say that, think of the most beautiful thing that you can, and then that's it. That's what I look like, kare. My hair is black, it's in a big bun. I've got green little earrings and a blue top. So apologies, my sincere apologies for not catching that earlier.
It's quite all right. We forgive you, Evotia. But thank you so much for joining us and attending our Zoom session. I know it's almost 8 o'clock. Coronation Street is probably coming on somewhere in the world, but also you might have other family commitments. So we really appreciate your time here with us. Again, if we didn't get to your questions, or if you have other questions that pop up, please get in touch with us. Our email is in the chat, but it's also capability@creativenzd.govt.nz. Oh my gosh, I'm rapping here. So without further ado, wishing you all an amazing night, and wishing you well with your families as we welcome spring and get ready for the night. So with that, me inoi tātou. Tu te mauri tū, te mauri oho, te mauri take take, I ahu I a mātua te kore, tēnā whakamaua kia tina. Tina. Haumi e, hui e, tai e.
Aroa amata koutou. Take care.
And everyone, please dance as you exit.